before we dive in, remember, not every crime leaves blood on the floor. Some leave hunger, silence, and secrets that rot behind steel doors. If you think you can handle what really happens inside, then subscribe, like, and keep watching, because once you hear this story, you'll never look at food the same way again. It began on a humid August morning inside Louisiana's Stonewater Correctional Facility, a gray, sun-bleached fortress surrounded by razor wire and cypress swamp. By dawn, the air already smelled of iron bleach and something faintly sour drifting from the kitchen block. The guards called it breakfast fog. The inmates called it the warning. At 6:02 a.m., kitchen duty inmate Marcus Hill dropped dead on the kitchen floor. No struggle, no screams, just a sudden collapse near the industrial sink, a tray of reheated eggs scattering across the cracked tile. The cameras caught everything. Within minutes, the alarm blared through the prison corridors, shrill, echoing, endless. When Captain Lorna Baines arrived, the scene looked routine at first glance. A dead inmate, maybe a heart attack, but something about it didn't sit right. Marcus wasn't old or sickly. He was 32, athletic, barely 2 years into his 20-year sentence for armed robbery. His eyes were open when they found him, wide, bloodshot, and glassy. The medical examiner on site, a tired man with nicotine stains on his fingers, whispered what nobody expected. This wasn't natural. Marcus Hill's death sent a ripple through Stonewater like electricity. He'd been one of the few inmates who didn't complain about the food. In fact, he defended it. "It's not gourmet," he joked to others, "but at least it keeps us alive." Now, that joke felt like prophecy. When Baines reviewed the kitchen logs, she noticed a curious pattern. Every inmate assigned to kitchen duty over the past year had filed at least one medical complaint: nausea, stomach pain, dizziness, except Marcus. He never once reported an issue. Then came the first twist. His final recorded meal, a special request breakfast tray, logged under his inmate number, but not signed by the kitchen officer. That was against policy. Word spread fast through the blocks. Within a day, whispers filled the air. Marcus was poisoned. But by who? And why would anyone target a man known for keeping to himself? The warden called in the state investigative team, led by Detective Aaron Kessler, a pragmatic man with deep-set eyes and a reputation for exposing corruption in county facilities. Kessler had seen every kind of prison cover-up imaginable, from smuggled drugs to stolen medical supplies. But this case felt different. His first stop was the prison kitchen. The metallic clatter of trays echoed through the concrete room. Everything was stainless steel, spotless, but cold in a way that felt staged, too clean. The kitchen staff stood in a nervous line. 3 inmates, 1 civilian cook, and the food services manager, Patricia Trish Dwyer, a woman who'd been running the cafeteria for 15 years. When Kessler asked about Marcus's tray, Dwyer froze. He got the same thing everyone else did, she said quickly, but when he pressed her for details, she stammered. Egg substitute, oats, orange juice. That's all. You can check the records. He already had. The breakfast menu matched, but the delivery log didn't. Marcus's tray was noted as pre-served, with a time stamped 20 minutes earlier than others, and in a different handwriting. That night, Kessler interviewed the inmates on kitchen duty. 2 of them told the same story. Marcus had argued with Dwyer 2 days before his death. Something about food inventory numbers not adding up. The 3rd inmate, a quiet lifer named Ronnie James, added something stranger. Marcus was keeping a notebook, he said. Said he found something in the storage room that shouldn't be there. Next day, that notebook disappeared. Kessler's had told him this was bigger than a single poison meal. He requested a full food supply audit, a tedious process that meant cross-checking purchase orders with delivery records, meal counts, and kitchen waste. The numbers didn't match. The prison had been ordering significantly more supplies than it actually used. Over months, thousands of dollars in food had effectively vanished. It wasn't the kind of theft you'd notice from outside. But inside a system that fed 1,200 inmates 3 times a day, small discrepancies could hide big crimes. Meanwhile, tensions exploded inside the prison. Inmates began refusing meals, claiming the food was unsafe. Others hoarded commissary snacks. trading ramen bricks and peanut butter like currency. Fights broke out near the dining hall. One guard was injured trying to calm a riot sparked by a rumor that Marcus had discovered something in the kitchen that got him killed. The warden issued a statement calling the rumors baseless. The next morning, a guard found the phrase, "Food is death," scrawled in ketchup across the cafeteria wall. Kessler's investigation deepened. He traced the missing inventory to a trucking contractor that delivered to multiple state prisons. The company's paperwork was spotless, too spotless. Every signature perfectly written, every date neatly aligned. He noticed that several signatures on Stonewater's logs matched Patricia Dwyer's handwriting. When confronted, Dwyer cracked. She admitted that small amounts of food were sold off to local vendors. Expired stock, she claimed, and the extra money went into a staff morale fund. But Kessler didn't buy it. Morale fund wasn't an official term. It sounded like hush money. Then he asked a real question. Did Marcus know? Dwyer hesitated. He might have. He was asking too many questions. I told him to stop poking around, but I swear I didn't touch his food. Her eyes darted toward the storage freezer. Check in there, she said quietly. Kessler and his team pried opened the industrial freezer. Inside were rows of frozen cartons labeled protein supplement. Each one bore a state seal, but no nutritional information, no vendor name. He sliced one open with a utility knife. Inside wasn't meat. It was gray sludge, the smell chemical and foul. Who approved this? He muttered. Dwyer swallowed hard. It comes from corporate. We just heat it and serve it. Kessler ordered the samples sent to the state lab. But before the results came back, something even stranger happened. The samples disappeared overnight. The evidence room lock had been broken. Security footage wiped clean. The next morning, Kessler received an anonymous note slipped under his door. Stop digging. The food isn't the problem. The people feeding you are. That night, another inmate collapsed in the dining hall. Same symptoms as Marcus Hill. This time, there was no denying it. Someone inside Stonewater was using food as a weapon. But when they searched the kitchen again, something was missing. Marcus's notebook, the one Ronnie mentioned, was found burned in the incinerator bin behind the kitchen. Only the cover partially intact. On it, 2 words were still visible. They know. Kessler stood in the gray dawn outside the kitchen block, the smoke curling from the incinerator. The hum of the generators filled the silence. He looked at the cover, blackened but legible, and knew what came next. This wasn't about spoiled food or theft anymore. It was about control, and someone inside the prison was willing to kill to keep their recipe for corruption secret. But the worst part wasn't who was hiding the truth. It was who was eating it every day. And when the toxicology report finally arrived, everything they thought they knew about the prison's food and who controlled it would explode wide open. The lab results came back 2 days later. The toxicology report confirmed it. Marcus Hill had died from exposure to a synthetic preservative banned in U.S. food production since the early 2000s. The substance, labeled P-37, was used decades ago in military rations to prevent spoilage, but studies later linked it to organ failure with prolonged exposure. That wasn't just bad policy. It was murder by neglect. Detective Kessler stared at the report under the flickering light of his temporary office inside the prison administration wing. The pages smelled faintly of printer ink and bleach. Each line was worse than the last. P-37 wasn't supposed to exist in civilian supply chains. Someone had gone through extraordinary lengths to bring it in. He called the supplier listed on the prison's invoices. Silver Valley Foods Distribution. The voice on the other end, polite but distant, confirmed they provided standard-approved nutritional supplements. When Kessler pressed about P-37, the call went dead. Seconds later, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You're asking questions that cost people careers. That night, he went back to the prison kitchen. The guards hated having him around. Too many eyes, too many questions. But one of them, Officer Dean Ramos, quietly pulled him aside. Ramos had been working kitchen rotation for 6 years. His face was drawn, sleepless. You're not going to find what you're looking for in the logs, Ramos said. But if you want to see who eats what, come by after lights out. At 11:47 p.m., the prison was a cathedral of silence. The hum of security lights, the distant slam of a cell door, and the low murmur of guards at post. Ramos led Kessler through the narrow corridor behind the kitchen, where the smell of ammonia clung to the air. They entered the restricted storage unit, a section supposedly used for bulk goods overflow. The door creaked open. Inside were rows of stacked boxes, labeled inmate meal supplement, not for external distribution. But the labels weren't government issue. They looked printed, homemade. Ramos lifted one lid, revealing dozens of vacuum-sealed bricks of gray paste, the same sludge Kessler had found in the freezer. "We've been feeding this crap for months," Ramos whispered. "Every kitchen worker knows. But the staff cafeteria? They get deliveries from the regional supplier. Fresh produce, real meat, bottled water. Different line, different truck." Kessler felt the pit in his stomach deepen. The prison had two menus, one for inmates, one for staff. And someone was getting rich off the difference. He took samples and photos, then told Ramos to keep quiet. But word traveled fast. The next morning, Warden Merrill summoned him to his office, a spacious room overlooking the exercise yard, walls lined with framed commendations and hunting trophies. "I heard you've been making yourself busy," Merrill said, pouring coffee from a silver carafe. "Food inventory, chemical testing, late-night tours. You're stirring up a lot of noise." Kessler didn't blink. "Marcus Hill died from a banned compound, Warden. That's not noise, that's homicide." Merrill smiled coldly. "You're out of your depth, detective. Whatever was in that man's system didn't come from this facility. The state will close the file, and you'll move on. Understand? I'm not done here." "Then you'd better watch your next meal," the warden said, setting his cup down hard. "Because not everyone who eats here makes it a dessert." Kessler left the office with his pulse hammering. Something about Merrill's calm tone was more dangerous than any threat. This wasn't about negligence. It was orchestrated. He returned to his car in the staff lot, only to find the driver's window shattered and the glove compartment open. The samples he'd collected were gone. Later that afternoon, chaos erupted in Block D. Dozens of inmates fell violently ill during lunch, coughing, vomiting, convulsing, all within minutes of eating the same bean stew. Medics rushed in. Guards shouted orders, but the scene turned feral. Some inmates screamed that the food was poisoned. Others threw trays at the officers. By evening, 5 were hospitalized. One didn't make it. The press caught wind of the incident. News vans lined the prison's outer gate, and by nightfall, Stonewater was on every local station. Food poisoning outbreak at state prison. Sabotage or neglect? The public demanded answers. But Kessler was already connecting dots. He noticed every inmate who'd gotten sick had one thing in common. All were part of the Kitchen Complaint Initiative, a small group of prisoners who had filed grievances about meal quality over the past 6 months. Someone wasn't silencing them quietly anymore. The next morning, a package arrived for Kessler through interoffice mail. No return label, just a plain brown envelope. Inside was a flash drive and a single note. "For your appetite for truth." He loaded the drive on his secure laptop. Grainy footage appeared, black and white security camera clips from the prison loading dock. They showed a food truck arriving at 2:17 a.m., 3 hours before the official delivery window. The driver wore no uniform. A man in a security jacket waved him through the gate. The camera angle shifted. The driver handed off a clipboard to the guard, Officer Dean Ramos. Kessler froze. The man who had helped him, the whistleblower, was the one unloading the contraband shipments. He replayed the footage twice, trying to make sense of it. Could Ramos have been playing both sides? Or was he coerced? The next frame answered his question. A shadow stepping into view behind Ramos, pressing a gun against his back. The image flickered, distorted, and cut out. That night, Ramos was found dead in his cell. The official report said suicide. Kessler didn't believe it for a second. As the investigation spiraled, new evidence surfaced. A hidden camera found inside the kitchen revealed that protein supplement shipments were being repackaged into inmate meal containers. The footage timestamped every delivery to coincide with after-hours shifts. The supplier's name, Silver Valley Foods, appeared again and again. But when Kessler dug deeper, he discovered Silver Valley wasn't real. The business address was a vacant lot outside Baton Rouge. The corporate registration traced back to a shell company tied to the prison's own administrative account. The money trail led straight to Warden Merrill. Kessler confronted him in the yard the next day, while media helicopters circled overhead. Merrill didn't deny it. In fact, he looked almost relieved. "You think this is about greed?" Merrill said, his voice steady. "You think I'd risk 20 years of service for cash?" "No, detective. This was about control. Food is power here. You feed a man garbage long enough, he'll swallow anything, even obedience." Kessler's jaw tightened. "You killed people." Merrill shrugged. "Not me. They did it to themselves. I just managed the menu." Before Kessler could respond, a loud crack split the air, the sound of a distant gunshot echoing from the administration wing. Guards ran toward the source. Merrill smirked, turning his gaze toward the noise. "Looks like dessert's here early," he said. Inside the admin office, chaos reigned. The assistant warden had shot himself, or so the story went. A single envelope sat on his desk addressed to the investigator. Kessler opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a short note, written in precise handwriting. "If you want to understand why some inmates never complain about prison food, check the staff pantry." Kessler stared at the words, realizing the investigation had just turned on its head. Because whatever was happening at Stonewater wasn't just killing prisoners. It was feeding someone else. The next morning, Stonewater Prison was on lockdown. Federal investigators had arrived before dawn, armed with search warrants and quiet questions. The death of Officer Ramos, the outbreak in Block D, and the mysterious suicide of the assistant warden had drawn national attention. But behind the bureaucratic silence, something darker was being buried. Detective Kessler hadn't slept in 36 hours. The warden's cryptic remark, "Check the staff pantry," echoed in his mind like a curse. He moved through the prison halls with a growing sense of dread. Every sound, the squeak of a cart, the clink of a key, the distant buzz of fluorescent lights, carried the weight of conspiracy. When he finally reached the staff pantry room, it looked ordinary enough. Shelves of packaged food, bottled water, boxes of protein bars, and coffee. The smell was clean. Too clean. Nothing like the foul rot of the inmate kitchens. But something caught his eye. An industrial refrigerator at the back, sealed with a digital lock. Merrill's name tag was taped across the handle. He called maintenance to override the lock. The click was soft, but the doors just felt like opening a tomb. Inside were trays of prepared meals, the same ones served to staff in the cafeteria. Neatly labeled, portioned, and dated, but the smell, metallic and faintly sweet, wasn't right. Kessler took one of the trays to the forensic team on site. 2 hours later, the lab tech approached him with trembling hands and a pale face. "This isn't food," she said. "It's synthetic, lab-grown protein made from—" She paused, swallowing hard. "Human tissue." The word struck like a hammer. Kessler stared at her, waiting for her to laugh, to say it was a mistake. But she didn't. "The samples matched the DNA of deceased inmates in the past 3 years," she continued. "Bodies listed as cremated. But according to records, the crematorium was shut down in 2019. The air in the room went cold. Kessler returned to Merrill's office. The warden wasn't there. His chair sat empty, his desk drawer open, files missing. But a faint buzzing sound came from the intercom system. He pressed a button. Merrill's voice crackled through, calm, detached. "You found the pantry," he said. "Good. I was wondering how long it would take." Kessler's pulse quickened. "Where are you, Merrill?" "Let's just say, close enough to hear the kitchen hum." The security feed on Merrill's computer flickered on. It showed the execution unit, a sterile room lined with metal tables and equipment. Merrill stood beside one of them, wearing a clean apron. His hands were steady, his expression tranquil, almost proud. "For years," Merrill said to the feed, "this place wasted life. Men rotted here, their stories forgotten. The state paid to destroy them. I found a better use." "You turned them into food," Kessler said, disgusted. "Recycled them. Merrill replied coldly, "Fed the system that created them. The inmates ate what they were, disposable. The staff, they ate the truth, dressed up in protein and policy." "You're insane." "No," Merrill said softly. "I'm efficient." The feed cut out. Alarms blared across the prison. Officers shouted orders. Inmates pounded their doors, and the hum of the generators deepened. Kessler ran toward the execution wing, his footsteps echoing down the long concrete corridor. When he arrived, the room was empty. Merrill was gone, but on the table, a stack of sealed meal trays sat neatly arranged, labeled staff only, do not discard. One was open, a spoon laid beside it like an invitation. Next to it, a handwritten note. They never complained because they were fed what they wanted: power, control, and a taste of what they made others become. Behind him, the heavy door slammed shut. Kessler spun around. A guard stood in the doorway, one he recognized from the cafeteria line. "Detective," the guard said, voice calm, almost polite. "You shouldn't have come here." Kessler's hand went to his holster. "Where's Merrill?" The guard smiled faintly. "He's gone, but his work continues." Another sound, a mechanical whine from above. The ventilation fans switched off. Then the faint hiss of gas filled the air. Kessler covered his mouth, backing toward the emergency release, but it was sealed. His vision blurred. He slammed his fist against the door, gasping for air. Moments before he blacked out, he saw the guard calmly lifting one of the meal trays, taking a bite. Kessler woke hours later in a hospital bed outside the prison gates. He was alive? Barely. The report said he'd been found unconscious during an evacuation drill. But his evidence, the samples, the footage, the flash drive, all gone. The official story claimed the outbreak was due to improper food storage. Merrill was missing, presumed dead. The state quietly shut down Stonewater Prison 6 months later. A new facility opened under a different name, would improve nutritional standards. But Kessler knew the truth. The system hadn't changed. It had just learned to hide better. He quit the force not long after. Some nights, he still saw Merrill's calm face on the screen, heard his voice echoing to the intercom. Food is power. And sometimes, when Kessler walked past a diner or smelled grilled meat from a roadside stand, a cold shiver crawled up his spine, because he couldn't stop wondering how many others were still eating what the system served without ever knowing where it came from. In 2024, a maintenance crew clearing the old Stonewater grounds discovered a hidden cold storage unit buried beneath the kitchen wing. Inside were dozens of sealed containers, unmarked, unregistered, and untouched. The official report listed them as biomedical waste, but one investigator described the smell as cooked. They say most inmates complain about prison food, but the ones who didn't, the ones who stayed quiet, ate every bite, and looked stronger for it. Maybe they knew the truth. Maybe they just liked the taste of power. If you thought this story was disturbing, you're not ready for what comes next. Hit subscribe, because the next one will make you question everything you think you know about justice and what we feed it.